Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to another bracket advice video. Today I'm going to be specifically talking about the Final Four. We all know how important it is to get those teams because of the multiplier. It really doesn't matter if you pick a 15 over a 2 correctly if you have none of the Final Four teams. You've got to have at least 2 Final Four teams along with correctly picking the national champion if you want to score in the 99 percentile of ESPN. And I would say this is definitely a holy grail analytical model to look at. I've had a lot of people, message me while I'm doing live streams, things like that. They say, I'm picking Kentucky to go to the Final Four. Guys, it doesn't make sense. And this is not a knock on Kentucky. I've been seeing it. Let's take a look at the team profiles. This is something you're going to want to look at so you can see over the past 10 years, who do these current teams profile favorably towards in terms of their analytics? And you can see UConn, which I'm sure a lot of people, they're the most popular team to pick to win the national title. 6 teams with similar profiles as UConn made the Final Four. Look at the right side, Final Four quadrant 6, and then championship winners 3. So UConn profiles extremely favorably to go on a very deep run. I will also be looking at region by region later in this video and talking about who got matched up with who do I like, which draws bad. I'm going to get into all of it, but I'm just saying this is a first thing to look at when you're looking at how do you formulate your Final Four. Connecticut is certainly a team to pick, at least according to this metric. Now, that doesn't mean it's guaranteed, but they favor unbelievably positively. You've also got North Carolina. They profile with 4 teams and that went to the Final Four along with 1 champion in the past 10 years. Arizona, it's 3. Houston, it's 4. I have UConn, Arizona, and Houston along with Tennessee, and you can see Tennessee profiles with 3 other Final Four teams, 0 national champions. You do have Iowa State with 2 teams and 1 national champion. And you do have Auburn with 1 Final Four team, no national champions. But moving on down that list, you can see teams that I would really stay away from, higher seeds that is. A team like Baylor, who's a 3 seed, they profile with 0 teams. Kentucky is another one I see a lot of people picking. Illinois, believe it or not. Now, Illinois was one where I was considering picking Illinois to go on a deep run. They got screwed with their region. So I am not having Illinois go very far. I believe I have them in the Sweet 16, maybe the Elite 8, but not the Final Four. By the way, look at the bottom, Texas. There's been a lot of people, and me included, we've been talking about that second round matchup, Tennessee against Texas. I have Tennessee going to the Final Four. I'm concerned about that matchup for Tennessee. I am. It just seems like Texas has the upside to possibly win that game. They haven't been talked about at all the past 4 or 5 months, but this is something to look at. You're going to want, guys, when it comes to the Final Four, give yourself the most chances with the best teams to have at least 2, maybe 3 Final Four teams. I'm not saying, there's not going to be any upsets. There won't be an 8 or a 9 seed in the Final Four. It's very unlikely. I know what happened last year. If we're actually trying to win some type of bracket challenge, whatever, maybe for your work, that's the easiest thing you can do. You could also maybe have Tennessee. I personally do have Tennessee. Purdue is a 1 seed that I would stay away from. They just don't profile very well. Believe it or not, Auburn, which shocks me, does not profile well either, considering their analytics are just crazy good. But let's look at region by region. The East region is just loaded. They have Auburn, UConn, and Illinois, the 2 seed there being Iowa State. It is pretty crazy because they considered Iowa State the worst 2 seed with what Iowa State did, destroying Houston in their conference championship game. And I'm someone that really didn't take too much stock into that as well because I have Houston winning the entire tournament. And by the way, we can get great value on Houston. I'm going to talk about them in the South and just how they're going to run through that region. But think about it. With Houston losing to Iowa State by like 30 points, everyone is off on Houston. So many people are picking UConn to win the national title. It's like UConn's at about 26%. In terms of brackets that I've picked them, and Houston's down around 12%. So if Houston wins, the multiplier we're going to get if you're picking Houston is going to be crazy over other people. But looking at the East, I just see it's very hard to see UConn losing the first 2 games, and then you do get that big matchup, UConn versus Auburn. And look, people ask me, could UConn lose to Auburn? Well, of course they could. Of course they could. It's the tournament. Auburn's a really good team. their top 10 offense and defense, I just can't predict it. It doesn't make sense. UConn's going to be the favorite in that game. They have an overall deeper team with higher impact players. That doesn't mean Auburn can't beat them. They can. Looking at the bottom quadrant, I do like Illinois. The Illinois BYU game should be really good. I don't want to disrespect Duquesne, but come on, folks. And then, by the way, people are starting to sell me on Drake beating Washington State and then Drake beating Iowa State. Now, I did not predict this personally. I actually had Washington State beating Iowa State in the second round because I've never liked Iowa State. They don't profile well at all on offense. I understand their defense is amazing. The issue is if you're like, outside of the top 50 in terms of offensive efficiency as a 2 seed, that's really lacking. That's a big red flag. So people are trying to say, look, maybe Drake goes on a run once, and I could see something like that. That'll be interesting. But I like Washington State kind of as the feel-good story. I could see them possibly knocking off a team like Iowa State. But I do like that to be kind of an Illinois-BYU battle in the bottom half of that bracket. The winner will advance and then take on UConn if UConn beats Auburn there. Moving on to the South, you do have Houston. Look at the 5 seed they have. Wisconsin, beautiful. I think Wisconsin is going to lose in the first rounds to James Madison. James Madison is one of my Cinderellas. Personally, only 4 losses. They've kind of been under the radar up until recently. That start time is not, wow, that's a very unfavorable start time. How is the 5v12 game starting at 9:40? That's very not good. What kind of scheduling is that? A 5v12 game starts at 9:40. And then you do have Duke and Vermont. A lot of people wondering, could Duke lose? Absolutely, they could lose. I'm not predicting it. This is kind of a deeper team, different Duke team, but they did not play well in the ACC tournament. Again, I'm not predicting it personally. I've got James Madison beating Duke in the second round and having a Cinderella run to the Sweet 16 and then getting beaten by Houston. But I do like Houston in that upper quadrant. The one team that I am hoping that Houston doesn't have to face is Duke, believe it or not. I just think Duke profiles well against Houston, so I would like to see Duke lose as early as possible, considering I do have Houston as my national champion. And the reason I have Houston as my national champion, Houston reminds me a lot of Gonzaga from previous years, to where they're always a really high seed. They've got a great coach. They always have senior leadership. This year, they've got amazing guard play. They're top 3 in terms of defensive efficiency. They're top 15 in terms of offensive efficiency. They check every single box. They just haven't won the national championship. They haven't finished the deal. But when you give yourself enough tries at a certain point, just like Gonzaga, they're going to end up winning it. I saw someone say they profile similar to Baylor when they won the national title. I agree 100%. This Houston team, they're just the best value right now. You can get them when you look at the popularity of a UConn over Houston when analytics actually say, no, Houston's better. I love the value on Houston. Moving to the bottom half of the region, a lot of people like NC State. I can understand it. I personally picked Texas Tech in that game. I do not think Oakland is going to beat Kentucky, and then it gets real interesting with Florida and Marquette. Now, I did pick Western Kentucky to beat Marquette, and listen, with something like that, it's very simple. I wanted a 15 over a 2. Originally, I was going to pick against Iowa State in the first round. Iowa State, they did play extremely well in their conference tournament. I wanted to respect that, so I didn't pick South Dakota State over them, and I went with Western Kentucky over Marquette. Will it happen? Who knows? It's a great start time at 2 o'clock, though. That's prime for an upset. And then I do like Florida. Florida is extremely bipolar. Yes, I have them going very deep. They can beat really good teams. They can lose to average teams. Florida needs to hope that Colorado loses in their first 4 game, and then maybe they'll face Boise State, and I really like Florida in that matchup. But if Florida faces Colorado, yes, Colorado can very easily beat Florida, and then very easily beat Marquette. But I do like Florida from that bottom area, and then also Florida possibly beating Kentucky, because Kentucky plays no defense and really going on a Cinderella run, possibly all the way to the Elite Eight at that point where they would lose to Houston. Moving on to the bottom half of the bracket, you do have North Carolina as the number 1 seed. So the thing with North Carolina, analytically, by far, they are the worst 1 seed. Not that it matters all that much. They're still a 1 seed, which is really, that's a huge thing to be, because that gives you such a big advantage in terms of kind of sleepwalking your way to the Sweet 16. St. Mary's, you can see that's a team I do like. I just like their draw. Yes, people have Grand Canyon beating them. Not surprising, it's a 5v12 matchup. I understand it. St. Mary's, you got to love that start time, 10:05 at night. That's great. That kills Grand Canyon's chance at an upset. When you have these games start really late, you just don't see the upsets, guys. Trust me, the start time does matter. Alabama and Charleston starting at 7:35. Well, that's a prime time for an upset right there. Alabama needs to be worried. No, I think Alabama's going to win that game. And then I do like St. Mary's in a defensive versus offensive battle. St. Mary's to advance. I just feel like St. Mary's this year, it feels like they always make the tournament and then they don't do anything. At a certain point, they're kind of similar to Drake. I think they're going to do something, and then I do have St. Mary's beating North Carolina, just because I'm not all that impressed with North Carolina, and I think St. Mary's can force a lot of turnovers, and that really wouldn't be a Cinderella run because they are a 5 seed, but that would be a nice run for them. Moving on to the bottom half of the bracket, I love New Mexico to go on a deep run. They're basically in a pick'em game against Clemson. Analytics actually say New Mexico should beat Clemson, even though they are the 11 seed. You do also have Baylor down there. I'm not very high on Baylor. I do think Baylor will beat Colgate and then lose to New Mexico, and then Arizona at the bottom. So Arizona is the 1-2 seed. People are picking over a 1 seed. And it kind of seems too obvious. I really didn't think this was going to be the case, considering Arizona last year lost to a 15 seed in round 1. I thought we would kind of get Arizona for good value to the Final Four. Well, evidently that's not happened. Everyone is picking them. And Long Beach State, look, Long Beach State has an A-plus name for an upset. It's like Florida Gulf Coast 2.0. But I just can't see Arizona losing to a 15 seed again. If Long Beach State was matched up with another 2 seed like an Iowa State or a Marquette, I would be picking Long Beach State probably just because it's funny. But, Arizona, again, are they really going to lose back-to-back years to a 15 seed? It just seems so unlikely. By the way, I do like Nevada over Dayton. Maybe I'm overreacting to Dayton's struggles, but it's kind of hard not to, considering, they were really bad late February, early March. Nevada, out of the Mountain West, kind of underseeded a lot of those Mountain West teams. Look, I don't like the Mountain West, but some of those teams are just, New Mexico should be a 10 seed, but they got bumped down because of all the, teams stealing bids. And then Nevada really should probably be a 9 seed. Maybe it's better for Nevada, although I don't think getting matched up with Arizona in the second round is all that positive. And then moving to the Midwest, you do have Purdue. So a lot of us predicting Purdue to get knocked out relatively early. I believe I have Purdue going to the Elite Eight, but not the Final Four. I think their second round matchup is great, whether it's Utah State or TCU. They should be able to walk to the Sweet 16. I do also have McNeese over Gonzaga. They just profile really well for a 12v5 upset. That's a beautiful start time at 7:25 as well. Oregon, I like them over South Carolina. Amazing start time at 4 o'clock. That is another 11v6 game where Oregon is basically in a pick'em against South Carolina. Anytime the underdog, if you've got like a 6v11 game and it's a pick'em, always pick the underdog. Always pick the 11 seed. And then you do also have Creighton and Akron. I could see Akron straight up beating Creighton in the first round. I'm guessing that game's going to go to overtime, 1:30 start time. And then, of course, at the bottom, that's where it gets really interesting. There's 2 potential picks you can make that will make or break your bracket. It would be Auburn over UConn in the Sweet 16, and it would be Texas over Tennessee in the second round, the round of 32. Those would be 2 picks that, if I was really bold, I would have made them, but I went a little bit safer. If Texas does beat Tennessee in the second round, they're probably going to the Final Four. Just because of the amount of momentum they have, that bracket is wide open, where Creighton is probably already lost at that point. South Carolina is an extremely weak 6 seed. Purdue as a 1 seed is beatable. That is why that second round matchup potentially between Texas and Tennessee is so interesting. And the reason I'm not giving the 10 seed a chance against Texas is because, what is that game? Oh, that's the Virginia-Colorado State game, right? Yeah, I'm just not a big fan of Virginia or Colorado State. I know people really don't like either of those teams. When it comes to the first 4, I do think Colorado will beat Boise State. I do think Montana State will beat Grambling. I do think Colorado State will beat Virginia. And I do think Wagner as 3.5-point underdogs will beat Howard. Not that it matters all that much. I do not have any of those teams going anywhere in the tournament. It's just very hard to predict a team to win their first 4 game and then go on a major run. And I don't think we're going to have any issues with that this year. It seems like a relatively weak first 4 field. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.